Hey guys, it's Amy at Zoe Beck, and I'm going to do my stats for October 2020. So my reading stats. I do this somewhat regularly every month, if I do remember. I'm doing it a little bit earlier than last month, but still a little later than I planned. This week I didn't get the time I thought I was going to get to film this, so here we are. Anyway, so October, it was a really pretty good reading month. I mean, star rating wise, it was very good. It was nothing super bad except for one I'll talk about, but that was more of a challenge to myself that I failed at, but we'll get to that. But overall, I think I read a lot more books than I planned to. I did read a lot of books that were small, and then I read a lot of big books. So it was like a toss-up on why my stats all come out kind of even, so it's kind of weird. So anyway, how am I gonna do this? Okay, so I have my trusty little list. I don't know why I just got back from grocery shopping. My brain is a little fried. Sorry. So let's start with my list of how many books did I finish. I finished 15 books in the month. That's, I mean, 15 is a good number for me. And again, there was a couple of short stories, but most of them are really long novels. So I think I did pretty well, 15. 10 of those books were physical, 1 was an ebook, and 4 were audiobooks. I did also, at some point during I did read a graphic novel as well, which was good. Anyway, I had one reread, which was The Strange Case of Jekyll and Hyde, or The Case of Jekyll, I don't remember how it goes. Anyway, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I had read it many years ago, probably in my 20s at some point, probably because it was, or let's just say it was probably around the time that League of Extraordinary Gentlemen came out, and I think I read a lot of stories that I didn't know about at that time, because I wanted to know more about the backstories of certain characters. Anyway, not that that was true, but I meant like true to the stories all the way, but you know what I mean. Anyway, so Jekyll and Hyde was my only reread for the month, so that's pretty low for me just to have one, but again, it was one I didn't remember very much, and was one DNF, as I DNF'd for the 3rd time The Tenant of Wildfell Hall. Yeah, anyway. What could I say? I don't know. Anyway, number 5 is how many were on my TBR for the month. So I only put 4 of the books that I said I was going to read for sure for this month, and I did it for the prompts for Victober. Again, I participated in Victober. This was my 4th year doing that, which was put on by Katie at Books and Things, Kate Howe, and Lucy the Reader. Again, I really enjoy this readathon, but again, I didn't hold through the whole month to Victorian literature, as I'll show in my genres. But I put 4 books that I would plan to read, and I read all 4 of those. So to me, that was like, I think, one of the first TBRs that I completed exactly what I said I would. I didn't complete all my extra books that I wanted to read, but I did get the 4 that I put for sure on my TBR. How many books were from my shelves and how many were from the library? So again, we're talking about the physical books. Okay, wait. For the first part is how many books were from my shelves or my TBR altogether. So 9 of the books that I read were books that I had physically somewhere, but I might have listened to an audiobook from the library. So, but 3 of the books that I read were from the library. So. And 9, I need to read more from my shelves, but still, that wasn't too bad of a number. And then how many of the books at the end of the month was I currently in the middle of? I had 1 that I was in the middle of, which I finished the next day, but it's not counted in the stats here. And then I had 2 books that were, when I ended the month, were possible DNFs. One of them was The Tenant of Wildfell Hall. The other one, a couple weeks into November, I've decided to DNF that as well. So technically there were 2 DNFs, but I didn't count it in my DNFs because I didn't decide to DNF until after the month was over. I know that's kind of a hokey number, but that's the way I do it, is when I date it, I have on my spreadsheet, I put down what date I started the book, and then if I DNF'd it or finished it, what date that is. And so my DNF list, anyway, does that make sense? I don't know. So here's the stat I'm not too proud of. I did buy 20 books in October. So normally my October book hauls are bigger than normal because usually there is a big library sale put on by one of the counties in my city. And so I usually get like 20 to 30 books at a go for a pretty cheap price. Well, no, we don't have them right now. So we have not had one this year, either the April one or the October one, which was very, very sad. But I still bought 20 books. And I think it was kind of a reaction to Victober. I always buy books when I'm in a themed month. I always buy a lot of books that I've seen on other people's TBRs or in their wrap-ups, or when they've talked about them, and I bought a lot of books that had to do with that. But then I also bought a lot of other books just because. And it was that kind of month, kind of a little stressful for me. Work-wise was very crazy, so I'm just gonna go with that. I still shouldn't have bought that many, but I did. And then of those ones I bought, one of them I read that month, and then another one I had read decades ago. So that put 18 books on my TBR, 8 of them for Victober, or Victorian literature. Yeah, I didn't do so hot. Pages read is 3,726. So I had an average of 120.2 a day pages read, which is really good for me. I always want to be over 100, but my low threshold is 50 pages a day on average. So anytime I'm over that, I'm happy. When I'm over 100, that's great. 120 is a really good number. So I did read quite a few pages for the month, even if some of the books were small, a lot of them were big. So my star ratings, I only had 1 5-star. I had 6 4-stars, but I would say one of those was kind of a 4.5, which I'll talk about later. And then I had 8 3-stars. So I didn't have anything I completely detested or that even was just okay, which would be a 2. So, which is a surprise for one of them, which I'll talk about one of my surprising reads. So, so really rating wise, that is really a good numbers for me. I mean, again, I'm very much a 4 and a 3. I give those out quite frequently for a lot of things. 5s, I said, have to be something that I really, really enjoyed or got something really out of it, which I did for the one I did get the 5. And then the 4.5 one is just because I think it's going to be a book I'm going to reread. And then it might jump up to a 5 for me. And I don't know. We'll see. It had to do partly with how I read it. Anyway, the genres I read this month were classics for Victorian literature. I read 10. I read 2 memoirs. I read 2 urban fantasies and 1 nonfiction history. So those were, I mean, that's pretty good. I mean, as I said, most of it was Victorian books. So I think I did pretty well. Oh, what did I just do? I turned it off instead of opened it. So the 1 5-star read I gave this month was a book that carried over from September into October. It was the audiobook I was listening to, and that is The Only Plane in the Sky, An Oral History of 9/11 by Garrett M. Graff. So I really enjoyed this audiobook, and this book was fantastic. And it's definitely for people who were alive during that time and remember how they felt when certain things happened. It is going through the day of 9/11 from the beginning to the end, and then a little bit of what happened afterwards, but not a whole lot. Most of it's just during that day. And it's very much an oral history. It's very much a style of history that I like from other authors that I've read. I really enjoyed this. I definitely want to get a copy of my own. I just haven't yet. But this was my 5-star read. It was one of those books that I was afraid to read because of the subject matter, just because I knew it was going to be hard-hitting, and it was. I mean, I cried in my car several times while this was playing. So I did, but that was my only 5-star read. So the one for Victober, I want to say, was my favorite read of the month, was Shirley by Charlotte Bronte. So so the rest of these books, it's funny. Anyway, I wasn't sure about this book the first 100 or so pages. I was really unsure I was going to be able to get through this. I did read to most of the schedule up until the 3rd week, and then I just plowed ahead because I just couldn't go at slow pace anymore. I think that kind of affected why it's not a 5-star for me, but I also think this is going to require a reread for me to decide if it is a 5-star and a favorite. Right now, it was so good by the end. I really, really enjoyed it. It's just the first, 120 pages or whatever, it just took too long to get into it. It was just too much, to me it was a lot of setup. And, but the story is about, Yorkshire area and people who live there and their interactions with each other during the Napoleonic Wars. So this is historical fiction, because this was written in 1848, I believe. So again, it's talking about 1886, I think. 1816, 16, 17, something like that. Or no, 13, 14. I don't remember. It's Napoleonic. Anyway, so I'm not saying this very well. But anyway, I really, really enjoyed this once we got into it. I definitely feel that this is a book I will have to reread in a couple of years, and just because now I know where it's going, I want to be able to go back and see the things that maybe she planted that I did not catch. I think I caught a lot of it, but again, I think it's a book that I will want to reread. And I am very surprised that I enjoyed it as well as I did by the end. So that was my highest rated Victorian literature book that I read. And then my surprise hit, not a hit, it's not a hit, it's just surprise. I just want to put this in here because I conquered the beast of Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. I listened to the audiobook, and for the first time I was able to get past 50 pages in this thing, and I did complete it, and I'm glad I did. And, you know, considering how much I have hated on this book in my mind, I may not have said so much about it. I just have never liked this book. If anybody had asked me what book I hated, it would have been this one, because I hated getting into it was hard for me. But now that I've listened to it, and I mean, again, I've read the beginning 3 times. This is my 4th attempt, which I finally finished it. There seems to be a theme here, which I'll explain in a minute. But this was much better than I thought. And again, Wuthering Heights is one of those books I just felt that I needed to read to say I've read it. I gave it a 3, and I'm still surprised about that, but I still hold to that because I think by the end it was a good read, like as in there is a lot of good writing in here, and there are themes in here that I was not expecting. I still will never like any of the characters in here. I mean, but I also think now, you know, maybe at some point in a few years, I will re-listen to it and I will get even more out of it and will enjoy it more. I don't know, because this has always been that book that I've had since college that I knew I should read because a lot of my friends liked it and I never got around to it. So I finally finished that. So that was my kind of surprise, because I told myself this was the last time if I didn't get through it. So I did. And then my most disappointing, and again, I put this as my most disappointing and least favorite because, again, it's my DNF of The Tenant of Wildfell Hall by Anne Bronte. Look at all the Brontes are in my hand here. So I had DNF'd this twice. I first DNF'd it at, when I first tried to read it a couple years ago at 119. And then later the next year, I tried to finish it. And I only got to, because someone said, oh, you just need to get to Helen's part. I got to 163 and I DNF'd the second time. And then I was listening to the audiobook and I got pretty far. I got this far in. So I got pretty far. But the last week of the month, I just could not pick up an audiobook. And I have not picked up an audiobook since. Actually, I'm not doing audiobooks right now. I think I just had too many in a row. And this I was trying to get through with audiobook from the library. So the audiobook went back to the library. So I'm on hold again. So this is still, so it's technically a DNF again. But I haven't put it fully on my list. It has kind of a caveat that when the audiobook comes back from the library, I will attempt again to finish this book. I am determined to get through the Brontes, and as I said, Wuthering Heights took me 4 times. Tenant of Wildfell Hall looks like it's going to take me 4 times. So anyway, I have rambled way too much on this little stats video. I hope you enjoyed that. I don't know, maybe. And did you guys have any good reads this month from Victober? Like any, really good reads, or anything you really enjoyed or really hated? I'd like to know. Let me know. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.